Sacred Societies, Their Place in Today's World, Part 2. Part 1 of this three-part series introduced the subject of secret societies, their defining criteria, hints of their roots, and the breadth of their motives got summarized. I proposed the general repugnance of their associated secrecy in today's world, a world in which the human species' readiness to move forward spiritually and to take control of its consciousness stands clearly. As stated in Part 1, this movement demands the end of the secret society eon. Now let's review a bit more closely a handful of secret societies' many historical highlights in order to mentally observe some of their proceedings, affiliations, and purposes. Secret societies have arisen in the Orient as well as the Occident. In China, popular fraternal organizations flourished in the early and mid-Qing period. In India, too, in association with its Brahmanic period, the ancient rishis of the priestly class performed Vedic rituals in a manner that may well have met today's criteria for secret societies. And certainly the mystical Swami order, the longest-lasting monastic order on earth, has passed down and carried on within its initiated ranks many of the inner traditions of yoga to the present day. While some of these inner traditions have been lost along the way, still others have survived the test of time, and where some of them have during the past century come into more public knowledge, enlarged those have been watered down for that public's consumption. Now, while we may understand the requirement that such inner teachings as those of traditional yoga have remained hidden from the masses due to their non-readiness to wisely receive the same, our argument here is in a slightly different direction. If it is true that this secret knowledge leads one to personal experience of the divine nature within, to the recognition, realization, and eventual manifestation of the sovereign self and its relation to the universal structure, and its relation to God or the Absolute, then the mane of the species stands in need of it now. And while it has always been the case that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and that when the seeker is ready, the truth shall open unto him, such formal stepping stones have turned into stumbling blocks, as the universe itself pushes forward and beckons humanity to come along. Humanity is now the student and the seeker. At last, the veil covering the truth must be lifted, so that his voice may be heard by all. Those who have ears will hear it, and those who do not will not. Turning to the Occidental world, we find a tapestry weave of secret society goings-on in Masonic, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian lineages. We find ancient systems of education involving Celsus and the Christian mysteries, the Druidic mysteries of Gaul and Britain, and the rites of Mithras. And we find mixtures of the Occident and Orient. The New Testament magician Simon Magus is alleged to have founded Gnosticism, which divided into two main branches or cults, the Syrian and the Alexandrian. And Balasades, the Alexandrian, combined Egyptian Hermeticism with the occultism of the Orient, and with Chaldean astrology and Persian philosophy. We also find similarities and points of convergence among the Orient and the Occident in these regards, such as was the case with the Odinic mysteries, which were fashioned after those of the Greeks, the Persians, and the Brahmins. According to Manly P. Hall, the Odinic mysteries were given in underground crypts or caves, the chambers, 9 in number, representing the 9 worlds of the mysteries. The candidate, seeking admission, was assigned to the task of raising Balder from the dead. After wandering for hours through the intricate passageways, the candidate was ushered into the presence of a statue of Balder the Beautiful, the prototype of all initiates into the mysteries. We find even today rites of passage that involve in one way or another dealings with tombs, crypts, or coffins, and the symbolic death and resurrection of the initiate. In the jaded history of today's Order of Skull and Bones, into which numerous current American political figures and generations of social movers have been initiated, we find record of stealing Geronimo's skull from its grave, and of its relocation to the site of rituals involving coffins and secret oaths, and of subsequent secret plotting to secure the consciousness hijacking of the rest of humanity. As we have seen so far, however, not all secret society affairs have concerned themselves with tombs and sinister plots. Hall says, The initiates of the Eleusinian school were famous throughout Greece for the beauty of their philosophical concepts, and the high standards of morality which they demonstrated in their daily lives. And because of their excellence, these mysteries spread to Rome and Britain, and later the initiations were given in both these countries. The rites of Eleusis were divided into what were called the lesser and the greater mysteries, a name which just so happens to smack of the greater and lesser keys of Solomon, portions of which, in combination with certain of Crowley's teachings, form the framework for much of the black magic perpetrated against humanity today. Throughout the tapestry weave of secret societies, we indeed find bright spots. But across the entire picture, a trend seems to inevitably emerge toward wickedness, war, and fascination with death, plotted in secrecy, carried out publicly. Hall continues. To Poseidon was given the sea and the island continent of Atlantis. In the midst of the island was a mountain which was the dwelling place of 3 earth-born primitive human beings, Evenor, his wife, Leucippe, and their only daughter, Cleito. The maiden was very beautiful, and after the sudden death of her parents, she was wooed by Poseidon, who begat by her 5 pairs of male children. Poseidon apportioned his continent among these 10, and Atlas, the eldest, he made overlord of the other 9. Poseidon further called the country Atlantis, and the surrounding sea the Atlantic, in honor of Atlas. The Atlantis race became a nation of wicked magicians. In consequence of this, war was declared, the story of which would be too long to narrate. Its substance may be found in the disfigured allegories of the race of Cain, the giants, and that of Noah and his righteous family. The conflict came to an end by the submersion of the Atlantis, which finds its imitation in the stories of the Babylonian and Mosaic flood. From the Atlanteans, the world has received not only the heritage of arts and crafts, philosophies and sciences, ethics and religions, but also the heritage of hate, strife, and perversion. The Atlanteans instigated the first war, and it has been said that all subsequent wars were fought in a fruitless effort to justify the first one and right the wrong which it caused. Before Atlantis sank, its spiritually illumined initiates, who realized that their land was doomed because it had departed from the path of light, withdrew from the ill-fated continent, carrying with them the sacred and its secret doctrine. These Atlanteans established themselves in Egypt, where they became its first divine rulers. Nearly all the great cosmologic myths forming the foundation of the various sacred books of the world are based upon the Atlantean mystery rituals. If not for the knowledge-holding few who have, with the fall of each round of the human race, withdrawn from their surrounding environments of devolvement, and carried forth some bit of the path of light for the next, humanity might have had no guide at all. And while nature takes her course at each round, slowly inching forward the evolvement of the species with each, the time is now for this round to take responsibility for its own evolvement, this time around willfully and intentionally playing well its own part in the great cosmic scheme, stepping up the pace, rather than letting it all up to slow chance amid severely antagonistic forces that would drag us backwards, often in the name of progress. Each of us must now turn to his own sovereign self, recognize it and realize it, and do his best to manifest his inherently divine moral qualities in the world. The transmutation of the race demands it. For we have come to that point where it is no longer for the few to carry the torch after the rest have sunk into oblivion. While we expect that cycles never cease, at some point we must do something to assure that each subsequent round will take conscious control over its own evolvement. We have arrived at this point. We must set the example. We must cross that line. Else we continue repeatedly to experience a doom set into motion by our own unnecessary ignorance and consciousness hijacking. The secret is out. We must run with it. There is no longer any excuse otherwise. Stay tuned for the final portion of this series, Part 3.